It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but we spend something like 90% of our lives indoors, basically inside boxes we've built for ourselves. So what happens when we design those boxes without any connection to the outside world? What's the unseen cost, the hidden price we pay for a world without windows? Okay, so let's dive right in. What we're looking at here is this really fascinating US government survey from all the way back in 1975. And what they were trying to do was compile all the research they could find to answer this one huge question about modern architecture. So, back in the 70s, you've got this energy crisis going on, right? And the thinking was actually pretty logical. I mean, a building used to be totally uninhabitable without windows. You needed them for light, for air. But now, well, we've got electric lights, we've got mechanical ventilation. We can solve those problems. So to save a ton of energy, the question became, why not just get rid of windows altogether? But it turns out it wasn't that simple. Right away, researchers started finding there was a whole other side to this story. This debate wasn't just about engineering. It was deeply human. Just listen to this quote. It suggests that on some subconscious level, we see a window as way more than just a piece of glass. It's our connection to the world, to life, and maybe even to our sense of freedom. Okay, so with that in mind, researchers set out to actually test this idea. And where's the first place they decided to look? Schools. Yeah, they wanted to see what really happens when you put kids in classrooms with no windows at all. And the arguments for and against were pretty clear-cut. On one side, you had the people who said, hey, a windowless room is great. You get more wall space for chalkboards, you get perfect, even lighting for reading, and, this was a big one, fewer distractions from whatever's happening outside. But the other side was saying, whoa, hold on. They argued it just creates this feeling of being trapped, and it totally cuts kids off from the real world. So here's where it gets really interesting. This is the first big surprise from the studies. When they looked at the most obvious thing you could measure, grades, test scores, they found nothing. No significant difference. Kids in the windowless classrooms didn't do any better, but they didn't do any worse either. So, case closed, right? No harm, no foul? Well, not exactly. Because the researchers started noticing other things, more subtle clues. For instance, teachers felt the students in those windowless rooms were more cautious, maybe a little less spontaneous. And then there's this. When you asked all the students to draw pictures of a school, the kids in the building without windows drew windows in their pictures way more often. And get this, one judge who looked at the drawings rated more of theirs as showing hostility. It's like they were subconsciously trying to draw back in what they felt was missing. Okay, so that's what was happening with kids in schools. But how does this whole thing play out in the adult world? Well, the next batch of studies looked at exactly that. Factories and offices, places where these compact, windowless designs were becoming super popular because, they were efficient. And unlike the students, the adults, well, they were much more direct with their feedback. The report is just full of stories from people in these windowless workplaces. And the complaints were all pretty much the same. Feeling claustrophobic, just a general sense of unhappiness, and even physical stuff like headaches and being tired all the time. And this next part, I think, just brilliantly illustrates the human response to all this. A researcher named Robert Summer noticed this incredible pattern in these underground windowless offices. He saw that people were basically creating their own views. They were hanging up posters of nature, forests, oceans, animals, and he called them surrogate windows. They were instinctively, desperately trying to replicate that missing connection to the outside. I mean, just picture it for a second. You're in a small, stuffy office staring at a blank wall all day. It's not hard to see why you'd want to hang a picture of a huge, wide-open beach right there, is it? It's like a psychological escape hatch when you don't have a real one. It's a substitute for the real thing. Okay, so all of this brings us to our final and, honestly, most dramatic case study. This is where the stakes get infinitely higher than, productivity or school grades. We are now heading into a hospital's intensive care unit. Now, before we jump into the study, there's a term we absolutely need to understand: postoperative delirium. And listen, this isn't just about feeling a little groggy or confused after an operation. No, this is a serious, acute brain syndrome. We're talking about patients becoming completely disoriented, agitated, literally losing their grip on reality. It's a major medical complication. So a researcher found what was basically the perfect natural experiment. You've got two general hospitals in the exact same community. They're served by the same doctors, and they have nearly identical intensive care units. The patients were similar, the treatments were similar, everything was lined up. But there was one single, crucial difference between these two units. It's this simple. One ICU had windows. It allowed patients to see the sky, to know if it was day or night, to have some sense of the world outside. The other one? It was a totally enclosed interior room. No windows, no connection to the outside world whatsoever. And the results were, well, they were staggering. Just look at this. In the intensive care unit with windows, about 18% of patients developed post-operative delirium. But in the windowless ICU, that number shot up to 40%. That is more than double. Think about that. Just removing that simple visual link to the outside world was enough to dramatically increase the risk of someone having a serious psychotic episode. So yeah, this shows us that the cost of a windowless world is very, very real. The question is, why? What is it exactly that we're losing when we take away a window? Well, that 1975 survey broke it down for us. And it's so much more than just light and air. A window gives you a view, right? A connection to life, to movement outside. It gives you real daylight, which is always changing in a way that artificial light just can't copy, so things don't feel so monotonous. It gives you sunshine, and the studies showed this is a huge psychological need for people. And finally, it just provides a sense of spaciousness. It makes a tiny room feel bigger and way more pleasant. So when you put it all together, the ultimate conclusion from this whole deep dive was crystal clear. A window isn't just another feature you can check off on a building spec sheet, like the color of the paint. No, it is a fundamental, absolutely vital link. It's what connects us psychologically and even biologically to the very world we evolved to live in. And all of that leaves us with one last big question. Remember, this research is from 1975. That's nearly half a century ago. So as we continue to build our modern world, these huge offices, basement apartments, interior workspaces, have we actually learned this lesson? Are we still just designing buildings for energy efficiency, or are we finally learning to design for the people who have to live and work inside the box?